reactants in cellular respiration include glucose and oxygen, which through a series of steps are turned into the products carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP. A majority of this ATP is made with the help of NADH, an electron carrier that transports electrons to the electron transport chain from earlier steps. The mitochondria, the site of cellular respiration, consists of two membranes, an outer and inner membrane. The inner membrane has folds in it called cristae to help increase surface area. The area inside the inner membrane is called a matrix, and the area between the inner and outer membrane is called the inner membrane space. In cellular respiration, ATP is formed in two different ways, substrate level and oxidative phosphorylation.
In substrate level phosphorylation, enzymes strip the phosphate off of a substrate. It then adds it to an ADP to make it into ATP. It is an endergonic process. This occurs in both glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. Oxidative phosphorylation is an exergonic process of making ATP by utilizing redox reactions. It takes advantage of electrons moving to more electronegative atoms, which results in the release of energy.
The name's bond. Ionic bond. Taken, not shared.
Two men walk into a bar. The first one orders some H2O. The second one orders H2O2. The second man dies. If a king farts, is it considered a noble gas? A neutron walks into a bar and asks how much for a drink. The bartender replies, "For you, no charge."
The first step in cellular respiration is known as glycolysis. It occurs in the cytoplasm. The purpose of this step is to split glucose into two pyruvates, creating two net ATP in the process. Two ATPs lend phosphates to a glucose molecule, breaking it into two pyruvates. This breakage causes the release of electrons that bond to NAD+ molecules, forming NADH. Two net ATP and two water molecules are created in this process.
The second step of cellular respiration is the formation of acetyl-CoA. This takes place in the mitochondrial matrix. The two pyruvates lose a carbon that is made into CO2, but they are replaced with coenzyme A, creating acetyl-CoA. Also, more NADH is created in this process. The CoA and acetyl-CoA helps bond the two carbons to oxaloacetate in the next step known as
the Krebs cycle. This process also occurs in the mitochondrial matrix. Its overall purpose is to break down the rest of the carbon from the original glucose molecule into carbon dioxide. Acetyl-CoA bonds to oxaloacetate and two carbon dioxides break off. Two NADH and an ATP are produced as well. FADH2, which is an electron carrier just like NADH, is also produced. The remaining carbons are rearranged back into oxaloacetate and the process is able to repeat.
The next step is called the electron transport chain. It occurs on the inside membrane of the mito, between the matrix and intermembrane space. NADH delivers electrons to proteins in the membrane. Protons from the NADH are pumped through the protein as electrons move from one protein to the next. Proteins become more and more electronegative, and energy is released. After this occurs, a proton gradient is formed. The high concentration is created in the intermembrane space outside the matrix. FADH2 drops electrons at later proteins, however less protons are pumped.
After the electron transport chain, chemiosmosis also occurs on the inner membrane. This is the last step of cellular respiration. It is a step where the majority of the ATP is produced. Protons travel from the high concentration to low concentration through the ATP synthase. This transfer of protons produces the large amount of ATP.
Hello, welcome back to Channel Protein News. I'm Avery Anaerobic Peterson, and this is my co-host Ionic Bond. We have some breaking bonds news for you today.
The traffic in the proton pumps today is pretty backed up.
And now, broadcasting live within the cell is Enzyme Ream, ER for short. He's a pretty smooth guy.
Thanks, Channel Protein News. Today in the cell, there is a 19-mile-per-hour wind blowing straight towards the mitochondria. And this just in. If you're going to be in the Goldie later this week, you might want to watch out. 80% chance of earthquakes. Back to you guys. Stay classy, eukaryotes.